Thanks very much for joining us for the Intermodal Logistics Podcast. I'm Kevin Baxter, joined by my co-host for this edition, Intech Freight and Logistics President, Shelley Austin. Hi, Shelley.
Hi, Kevin.
And so this is one of those cases where we've had two episodes that could not flow into each other any better. So we just had Ann Renke on our last episode, who was the predecessor of our guest today, Chris Burrows, for the president and CEO of the Transportation Intermediaries Association, or TIA. And Chris, you've been there quite a while, so it's not your first rodeo with the TIA. It's not the same kind of transition that Ann had, for instance. But we're excited to have you on to talk about your new position and the organization.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Kevin. Shelley, great to see you as always. So
good to see you too, Chris.
So first of all, let's start with your background a bit, your background in the industry with TIA, and also how you got into the field to begin with.
Yeah. So right after college, I come from a pretty political background, political family. So always kind of had politics in my veins, if you will, and went to a bunch of different congressional offices and congressional committees looking for employment. As I knew I kind of wanted to go into that space. Ended up landing working for the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. So that was kind of my first take with the transportation industry. From there, I worked several years on the committee, went over to a small lobbying firm. One of our clients was TIA. So got to know our old CEO, Bob Voldman, extremely well. And 13 and a half roughly years ago, he offered me a position to come in-house and serve as a manager of government affairs for TIA. And again, the rest is history. So I've been here almost 14 years. I've enjoyed every second of it. Loved working under Ann, under her leadership for the last 4 years. She really elevated the association. And I got some pretty big shoes to fill, kind of replacing her. But I'm excited for the challenge and appreciate the opportunity from our membership.
And so you've been in the position a few months now, right? So how has it been so far? How would you feel the transition has gone?
Good. Yeah, I think the transition is going really well. Obviously, as you mentioned, and I mentioned, I've been here a long time. So I've kind of seen it all, if you will, over the last 13 and a half years or so. And when I started, TIA was a very small organization. I think we probably had like less than 10 people in terms of staff. So you kind of wore many different hats as you had to. You helped out with meetings, you helped out with the marketing, you helped out with education everywhere. So I think it was a good training exercise. I didn't realize that back in the day that this would all kind of cultivate and lead to this. But it certainly helped train me to kind of have a piece, if you will, of each of the different departments as I've assumed this role in November. As a new CEO.
Great. So you mentioned you started out with less than 10 employees. How many do you have now, just for those who might be curious?
Yeah, TIA, we have about 20 employees or so right now, including a couple of contractors. So yeah, we've certainly grown over the last few years and excited about the growth of the organization. Along with the growth of the brokerage industry, we've certainly seen a growth within TIA. So.
And I should back up too. Tell folks who maybe are less familiar with TIA what exactly TIA represents and its place in the industry.
Yeah, so TIA, we're the professional organization or association for the third-party logistics or freight brokerage industry. So like any good trade group or association, we support our members through many different verticals. One being kind of my background is the advocacy, which is a big piece of what we do. We're the voice for the 3PL industry on Capitol Hill with the federal agencies, with the administration. We also do events, networking, education, data, research and analysis. It's essentially like, any sort of good trade organization. We're there to serve our members where we can and provide value and help them grow within their business.
So, Chris, I am super excited to have you. We were just talking that I knew you back when, and now you're in this awesome role, and congratulations. And, you talk about your history with TIA. I feel like I've been a part of that history. I was back on the board, and so I think I was there very similar to the early stages, and it has been amazing to see the growth. We worked together on some committees. You were one of the few that kind of took hold and understood the intermodal space, and that was exciting. So one of the things that is just a hot topic, and it's with TIA, it's everywhere, is broker fraud, and we've heard a lot about it. We had Ann on, and she was talking a little bit about the fraud and then also just theft in general, kind of two different categories. But tell us, is this still as big of an issue as it was before? Have you seen some improvements? What are you seeing in that space when it really is in the brokerage, the truck brokerage area?
Yeah, I mean, Shelley, this is the number one. No surprise to anybody, but this is the number one issue that we hear from members on. We used to say kind of at a daily basis. It's probably hourly at this point. Of some member reaching out with a latest fraud or strategic theft is what we're supposed to be calling it nowadays. Of what's going on in the space. But yeah, it's a massive issue. Back in 2020, Ann and I sat down with the FMCSA and we asked them. We said, hey, we're really starting to see this rise of kind of what we consider fraud in the industry. And we said, hey, you guys have this National Consumer Complaint Database. How many reports are you all seeing? And I remember we were talking with Jack Van Steenberg, and they just hired somebody to oversee the Consumer Complaint Database. And I can't remember the guy's name, but he was like, hey, John, how many reports do you have? I asked to crunch that number for this meeting. And he's like, yeah, I did. It's 80,000 complaints, which is just a massive amount. I mean, Jack was blown away. And he's like, what are we doing with these? And the guy's like, I don't know. I just started. So it's been a massive problem. Obviously, it's one that really kind of came up with the pandemic, with the massive increases in volume and demand within the supply chain, and this well-organized criminal activity kind of blossomed from it. And they're very, very, very organized. This isn't what we would consider. We worked on a piece of legislation back in 2012. The Fighting Fraud in Transportation Act. We were concerned back then about having a level playing field for brokers entities who were brokering freight had to have a license, and we called that fraud. But it's really a carrier for non-nefarious reasons, but may have bitten off more they can chew, maybe found a better paying lane. They wanted to rebroker it out to a buddy of theirs. That's what we saw in 2012. But really, what it is now, it's really cargo theft and the strategic theft of phishing and gaining access to credentials. So it's a massive problem. We're tackling it from many different fronts. Internally, we have a fraud task force that's been working on this, kind of providing industry with best practices, trying to keep members abreast of the latest strategies and tactics that the criminals are utilizing. We don't publicize a lot of this stuff because we, quite frankly, don't want them to know that we're on to what they're working on now. But additionally, we're working with the agency, the FMCSA, to kind of get off the sidelines, if you will, and a little bit more active on this issue. We have some legislation that's going to help do that, provide some of the authority back they need to assess civil penalties for fraudulent activity, which is kind of the follow-up conversation we had in 2020 was they were like, okay, well, hey, there's this administrative law judge ruling out here. We can't assess civil penalties for commercial violations. So there's really not a lot we can do. Long story short, this legislation would restore their ability to do that and really combat. But a lot of it really is on the front end of the agency. The FMCSA is using a very antiquated registration system. It's very easy for folks to get in. I mean, they don't use, dual factor authentication. It's simple to go out and access accounts. The FMCSA hasn't been hacked, but people are gaining access through phishing to credentials, going in, changing records, and it's just too easy to do that. So to their credit, they're kind of signaling that they're going to update this registration system. Time-wise with the federal government, everything is crazy slow. So we're just not sure how that's going to play into it. And then, who knows what the DOGE effect's going to be on DOT, and a lot of these jobs are going to get eliminated. And, that certainly eats a lot of the resources of potentially be working on this. But they're taking the necessary steps, it looks like, to kind of address this from the front end. Because, we had a member who came to the fly-in a couple of years ago. Shelley, I think you were there. And, they mentioned they kind of caught one of these fraudsters on the phone. They said, hey, we called you. And the guy was kind of laughing at him. He's like, you're never going to catch me. I'm not in the United States. And if you shut this authority down, I've got 100 other authorities I'll just go under.
Yeah.
So it's a massive problem. Everybody's dealing with it. I don't, as we got smarter about it, they're coming up with more tactics as well. I think, companies are taking some good steps to address it. So hopefully it's kind of easing off. But within our fraud report we put out end of last year, cargo theft that our members had saw was up like 600% year over year. So it's a massive amount that's going on.
Yeah, I think the scary part is, it takes technology to fix it and solve it, but the more technology creates more abilities for fraud, because these people, they're not your traditional thieves out there. They're masterminds in the technology, and they're very creative and very smart, and that's what's so scary. You wish it would be put to good use, not to doing these things that are hurting people and costing people money. So it's one of those things. I mean, you guys have Technovisions. We just came back from Manifest, and like that's the forefront of all of our industries right now, is to figure out what is the next and greatest technology, AI and everything else. And then you start to get concerned that, these folks are seeing the same things, and how are they going to use that to take advantage of us as we move forward? So it's one of those things that is kind of the battle. But it is what it is, and we all figure out how to move forward. And I think, as you mentioned, the FMCSA and everybody progresses, that helps create those gateway, the gates and in those blocks that will really protect us a little bit more. It's funny you say that about the fly-in, because I feel like some of these cases that I've seen or researched or been a part of on the true fraudulent activity, I think we're all going to be on the next Netflix documentary, because they're so interesting. Somebody would really like to cram in one of those documentaries. I know they would if we put all of it in there.
Yeah, yeah. We've gotten a lot of media inquiries since the tequila heist. I'm sure you've all heard of that. The Sammy Hagar's and Guy Fieri's tequila brand. We got a lot of calls being like, "Hey, this interesting names here. Like, what happened? Tell us about it." And we're interested in this strategic theft that's going on in cargo theft. So it's unfortunate that a big name or two big names like them would kind of resonate this with the media. But you're right. I mean, some of the stories are absolutely crazy.
They're nuts.
Yeah.
Well, I guess on the flip side, the big names getting interest does at least, get that story out there a little bit more.
Just more awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, kind of historically, members probably and companies don't really want to talk about fraud. You don't want to go to the media or, go to, any of the trade publications and be like, hey, let me tell you about this incident of fraud that could help everybody else, because, it kind of puts you in a bad place. Like, hey, we didn't take care of our customers' freight. Potentially, it wasn't our fault necessarily, but I think you're seeing kind of a trend in moving away from that is like, people are willing to come out and talk about it to help the industry. I just spoke at a conference last week where fraud was a big topic that was discussed, and it's like we need everybody involved getting out here, telling your story, even if it's not the best story for your company, but at least it helps other players in the space and really shines a light on this. And that's when you're talking about Congress and the administration, they want to hear these stories that's personal impact to their state, to their congressional district, that they can take them and say, hey, this was my business from my congressional district that got hit. They're out, $500,000. This is what happened. They followed their appropriate steps. They just, utilized the carrier that bought an MC number, 2 weeks ago, whatever the case may be. But we got to get out. We got to share these stories for the betterment of everybody.
So before we leave the topic, the report also had like a financial impact on it, and it was pretty major in terms of the amount of money that gets lost from this kind of situation.
Yeah, I think the average was about $400K per company, and that that's not necessarily all claims, but that's also like additional employees, that's additional technology spend. This is money that's dedicated to combat this problem, in addition to what the financial impact through claims or what that process looks like as well. So yeah, it's not a small piece of certainly a company's financial profile.
Yeah, and we brought this up with Ann when we talked to her recently. But when you're in a situation, you talked about the fact that it kind of ramped up in the middle of the pandemic when everyone is super busy and there's a lot of money coming in. So there's maybe a little less of a time where you have a chance to. You can kind of brush it off and keep going, but now you're in a situation where we've had a couple of years where things have not been coming in as strongly for the freight industry. So, how much is that really affecting people on an individual case basis, really making a big difference to a business?
Yeah, I would say kind of to kind of paint a picture of that, the commodity is also extremely important. I mean, these are, like I said, these are well organized criminal activities. So they kind of took advantage of that economic situation. They still are today, to your point. Let's look at eggs, for instance. We all know that egg prices are through the roof. You go to the grocery store, you see it, you hear on the news. Last week we saw the latest one, the egg heist, where there was, thousands of eggs stolen off a truck.
Yeah.
You saw the same thing during the pandemic when baby formula was the hot news topic. There's not enough baby formula out on the grocery store shelves. We had several members who had truckloads of baby formula stolen. So they're targeting this hot commodity, kind of taking advantage of the economic situation, in general, but then also specifically for a commodity. I think it's a very lucrative business. Obviously, it's billions of dollars that's getting stolen on an annual basis. So I don't think with limited enforcement from the federal agencies, not a lot of way of tracking these folks down. There really isn't a lot of deterrent for these folks to not be doing this, even as we're hopefully climbing out of this from an economic perspective, from this potential freight recession we've been in. So hopefully it gets better, but I think, we as an industry have got to combat it with the help of the federal agencies kind of on the front end too.
Chris, what would you say? We all know this is big, and it's been big for a couple of years, and it's been the highlight. Like, you go to the conferences, and our poor little intermodal panel, we're trying to get really creative. I might stand outside and flag people in, because if we're up against a fraud session, we're in trouble. But what would you say is the next biggest topic that the TIA is putting a lot of resources around? Is it technology and AI? Is there something else out there that maybe it's indirectly related to this, like insurance? I mean, what are you seeing, as the next big thing that everybody's talking about that we all need to put focus on?
Yeah, it's a variety of things. But first of all, your intermodal section is always standing room only. You know that.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that plug. I'm very, very happy. Thank you.
Fire marshal's like, no more shares. But yeah, I mean, insurance costs is certainly one we're paying close attention to, and that obviously is a heavy playing on fraud. It's also playing on, it has for years, on these nuclear verdicts. These truck accidents has played a lot into the insurance industry, and putting a lot of carriers and a lot of potentially a lot of brokers, small brokers, out of business because of these increased costs. And we've heard from members who have worked with 100 truck carriers that are like, hey, I can't afford the 300% increase to my motor carrier insurance. We're just shutting down. So that's a massive problem. That's kind of a residual effect of these problems as well. Technology obviously is a huge play. We're trying to keep, again, our members aware of the latest technology trends. How does AI help you, affect you? You said earlier, Shelley, it's definitely a double-edged sword in this issue of fraud. It can certainly be a very super valuable tool, but also can be a very valuable tool for the criminals that are utilizing AI. And, some of the stuff they're doing, like we saw at Technovations last year, when basically you can have a whole conversation with an AI bot and you never even know it.
Right.
So just imagine what criminals are doing, or scamsters are doing with that. It's nuts. But, we got a lot of things we're working on Capitol Hill. Obviously, the nuclear verdicts, the truck accidents being one of those. Keeping a close eye on the independent contractor issue is always a huge issue for TIA. We're a huge supporter of independent contractors. We're hopeful with this administration change. President Trump during his first term provided a lot of clarity to the industry and just labor in general about what is an independent contractor versus employee, and provided a much clearer line. Those were blurred the last couple of years under the Biden administration. So we're hoping that kind of reverts back to the Trump era. And just a lot of issues that are impacting the supply chain. We're heavily focused on it. This broker transparency issue is one that's popped up that we're certainly keeping a close eye on, and spending a lot of our time on Capitol Hill advocating against.
So there's really no downtime, is what you're telling us.
No, that hasn't changed in the new role. So yeah, no downtime. There's plenty to do on Capitol Hill.
Plenty of areas to focus on.
Yeah.
So the nuclear verdicts, I think we actually did talk about this a couple years ago on the podcast, and I think for those who are unfamiliar, it involves sort of that, like the layers of responsibility, right, in terms of an accident.
Yeah, there's really just kind of I'll briefly summarize this. So there's basically like two liability theories that shippers and brokers particularly have to pay close attention to. Is one is vicarious liability, which means that you did too much. You exerted too much control over a particular trucking company or carrier. If an accident, again, these are typically come about if there's an accident where somebody's severely injured or killed, unfortunately. So vicarious liability, exert too much control. Negligent selection is the more popular one these days, but it says you didn't do enough. So you've got to navigate that thin line between not exerting too much control, but exerting some control over the carrier, or at least the selection process of that carrier. Courts have gotten, or plaintiffs' attorneys have gotten really, creative with their, data they're using and representing these injured parties. It's something we've obviously been paying close attention to. There's been massive $20-30 million verdicts against some of our members, against some trucking companies. So we worked on legislation. We've got some pretty favorable court decisions recently. But again, until the U.S. Supreme Court either takes a case or we find a legislative solution to address this problem, it's going to continue to impact trucking companies. It's going to impact shippers, going to impact brokers, obviously. And again, that's the whole residual effect on just the overall cost of everything with insurance. And then, someone's got to bear the cost of this increased regulation or insurance cost, and everything kind of flows down to the consumer. So when we go to the grocery store, we all face these inflationary market effects.
So we've talked about, the government advocacy route is kind of a big part. It was kind of the focus of your job before, but it's still a very big part of TIA. So as you do deal with the change in administration, which is something that is going to potentially happen every 4 years or at least every 8 years or so, how do you prepare for that? And in this particular case, are you still just kind of feeling things out a little bit as the new Congress is just getting started and the new administration as well?
Yeah, I think certainly this new administration is probably different from the past few with how quickly they've hit the ground running. It's hard to believe it's been 3 or 4 weeks. It hasn't really been that long, but it's felt like probably 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's crazy how much stuff they've done, or they're just on speed. So that's kind of required us to be a little bit more proactive. So we've been having conversations. When right after the election, there was a transition team that's put in place. We were meeting with those folks even before any of the political appointees got in there. And again, as those are filling in, those positions are getting filled in. Certainly, we're being on the forefront. We're getting out there. We're being active with those folks, presenting our priorities. Last week, we spoke with some of the political appointees that are already there. We had this stakeholder day before the House T&I committee staff as they're gearing up to do their surface transportation bill this year. So certainly, kind of with the administration a little bit on speed and moving really quickly, we need to be just as equally quickly to get out there and get our priorities out there, because organizations that may not agree with us are coming in the meeting right behind us. So we've got to be active and up there.
Well, and the other thing that makes this a little different is you do have the previous administration of the Trump administration 4 years ago to sort of base some ideas off of.
Right.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of those political positions, a lot of those folks are coming back too. So they'll have an institutional knowledge, kind of a set of priorities already. I think, this administration may be a little bit different than Trump 1. I think you certainly have seen that already with some of his cabinet picks. Yeah. He's certainly picking, allies of his, folks that have been loyal to him over the last few years. For instance, look at the Department of Transportation. He picked Secretary Chow to lead the Department of Transportation. The first time, certainly qualified to do it. She led the Department of Labor under Bush. But was he doing a political favor for Mitch McConnell, at the time the Senate Majority Leader? Because that was he's married to Elaine Chao. They certainly don't have a good relationship, as you can turn the news on and see. Yeah. They don't like each other. So how many of those did he do? Just to kind of fill out that inside Washington, you've been here, you know what you're doing. Where now it's, hey, he's picking people who have been loyal to him. And again, I think a lot of the policy stuff's going to come directly out of the White House. I'm not saying that DOT won't drive policy. I'm sure they will. But I think a lot of it's going to come directly from Stephen Miller, his policy advisor, and the team he's got at the White House, really directing the agency from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So, yeah.
So speaking of a lot of the actions on speed, there's a lot happening with cross-border. And there are members that TIA has that are cross-border transportation providers. So what are, as we were talking about the hot topics, maybe this is more immediate. What are you seeing in regards to all of the pressures and the challenges? And now we have a lot of congestion and everything in regards to cross-border traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of members that do a lot of cross-border traffic. We've kind of a pretty broad vanilla policy position as we want, the free flowing movement of goods between our friends in the northern and southern borders, and make it as seamless as possible to not delay, moving products along the supply chain. Last Congress, we were actually able to finally achieve a pilot program under the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. That was started right after 9/11, kind of think of like the TSA pre-check of cross-border security. Mm-hmm. So DOT licensed property brokers have been excluded from this program since its inception. It's something that I was fighting for when I was at the lobbying firm working on behalf of TIA. So we were able to finally achieve a victory in getting a pilot program for our members to participate in this. And again, it's just putting more trusted eyes out on the cross-border freight, knowing that we're utilizing, industry partners, carriers that are safe, what the freight is, just a better process overall in knowing. But certainly there's a lot going on in trade that we'll be paying close attention to, either be cross-border or what's the impact of the tariffs, et cetera. I think there's a lot that we don't quite know yet, to be candid, but, I'm sure it will get fleshed out here soon on, are these political games he's playing with these tariffs? Obviously, there's an end goal he wants, dealing with immigration, especially with Mexico. But, ultimately, what's his end game? I don't know. I said this on a podcast recently. I was like, I wouldn't predict or say I was going to predict what the president was going to do, because that's a losing game. You can't predict what President Trump's going to do. And if you're in that business, you're probably not in that business very long. So, because he gets something in his head and goes with it. So, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, we're certainly paying very close attention to what's going on with cross-border and international trade.
Well, I think that's very cool that you've made that win, because TIA definitely has resignation with the shipper community, as far as, hey, if I'm using a TIA broker, I'm using a legitimate, strong, well-certified broker. This takes it a whole another step if the shipper community understands the success you've made there. Now, if I use them for cross-border traffic, I know that and even another layer of protection has come into play. So I think that's something definitely to put out there. And as we continue to grow that cross-border, that's something that everybody needs to know. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you hinted at this a little earlier. The other piece of sort of uncertainty dealing with the new administration is the staffing of government and the DOT and other agencies that could have some tie-in with the industry. How do you sort of plan for that? I mean, obviously you can't predict, as you said, too successfully, but how do you plan around the idea that maybe there won't be the people to enforce certain things that do get on the books, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. One we're trying to tackle right now and think about. I know I don't think the Doge has gone over to DOT yet, but they're going to look at every federal agency. They're going to figure out what sort of waste or excess that they feel is necessary. And make cuts. I think the last number I saw was just government-wide that 60,000 folks had taken the buyout, which that's a huge number. And when you're especially dealing with an issue of fraud, and we're trying to get the FMCSA activated on this, and working with other agencies, obviously the FBI, Homeland Security has an investigative team. We reached out to them earlier this year when after a few weeks ago, after Trump came in office, and a lot of those folks were like, we're not sure who's even going to be here in a week to take your meeting. So there's just a lot of moving pieces. I know a lot of people are, as you can imagine, kind of in the DC space, very nervous. And there's going to be massive changes, and we're going to have to adapt the best we can to represent our members, and we will do that. But it may be challenging from a resource perspective. So, I mean, the last bipartisan bill, when the federal government had grown pretty large, and they got a large pool of money within FMCSA to hire people. They were complaining about resource issues then, and we don't have enough folks. I mean, if we're going to go in and if the administration is going to go in and cut folks, we're going to have an even bigger problem. So, but again, we'll adapt where we need to, and we'll advance our initiatives for our members, but it can be challenging for sure.
Any other sort of, I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of challenges, but what do you see as some opportunities for, both with the new administration and just in general for how the industry is moving in the coming year?
Yeah, I would say one of the big opportunities, and this is kind of building upon what Anne's been working on the last couple of years when she was at TIA, is just further validifying those relationships with other industry stakeholders. That's going to be a strong passion of mine and a strong priority of mine is going out and building relationship with carrier groups, going out and building relationship with the shippers, with the railroads. We can find we may not agree on all the issues, and thinking of the broker transparency issue with the owner operators, but 95% of issues we agree on, and that's where we need to come together, build a stronger business relationship that everyone gets a win-win-win situation in terms of relationship. We're contrary to what some people say in the social media spheres. TIA we are a pro carrier organization. Our members rely heavily, obviously, on small trucking companies to move our customers' freight. They're an integral part of what we do, just as much as we're an integral part of what they need us for. So forging those relationships, continue to build those is going to be a top priority for me.
Yeah, I love that. We even talked with Anna about it. That it is so neat how the TIA and IANA have so many similar focus points, and to further that collaboration, I think will be huge for all of us on the ultimate outcome.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
We've talked a little bit about how TIA adds legitimacy, and one of the other ways is the surety bond program. So. For those unfamiliar, tell us how TIA is involved in that, and what that means if somebody sees a level of coverage that a carrier or a broker has.
Yes, we partnered a number of years ago with Avalon Risk Management, who's kind of our insurance product, issued the TI bond. I guess it's just a trusted bond program. So you kind of there are other great players out there as well. I'm not saying that TI has the market for the bond and surety and trust fund programs. But it's just we want to build the TI brand just in general. A couple of years ago, we really tightened up our requirements to come into the industry. So a lot of people don't know this. Back in 2012, the same piece of legislation I was talking about earlier, MAP 21, there was requirements put in there to experience and knowledge requirements to become a broker just in general. So you had to either have a person executive on your staff that had 3 years relevant experience, or demonstrate to the Department of Transportation that you had a sufficient knowledge of the industry in order to enter the industry. The FMCSA's never implemented this, but we implemented it within TIA a couple of years ago because we felt like we really needed to increase the barrier to entry within TIA and bringing in just the best of the best within the industry. So we tightened our membership requirements. Again, we want to build that brand. We do a lot of work with the shipper organizations to get our brand out there and have those folks look at us. We want the first question to be is, hey, when they're looking for a broker, are you a TI member? And we made some huge strides in that, but need to continue to kind of back up what we're saying to make sure that we are bringing in the best of the best within the industry.
So speaking of those tools and things that you offer, one of the things that I'm near and dear to that I enjoy a lot, and not everybody knows, is the education piece of TIA. And it's very helpful in regards to not only the young leaders that are coming up in the industry, but it's extremely helpful to organizations that have new employees or people to try and help educate them and get that learning curve a lot quicker than what you have before. So, in one of the things that I really appreciate about TIA is you've gone to the level of you have certifications. It's a certified education program. So, tell us a little bit about that, Chris.
Yeah. So we have a certified transportation broker. It's the industry certification, individual level for a person to take. It's really, any sort of professional certification, similar to any professional certification you'd see out there. We're very proud of it. In addition to many different educational offerings that we have within TIA, focused on certain modes of transportation. Shelley, you've been so kind to help us over the years with our Intermodal and 101 and kind of a 201 course. So your beginner level and a little bit more advanced level, but temperature controlled. There's a variety of different educational offerings we provide to members. We made several of those courses this year as part of your member benefit. So, it's not everything is additional charge. Some of them we have to charge, obviously, because, we have a professor involved, which obviously puts a little bit of cost to the association on it. But where we can, we're going to provide as much value as we can and member benefit to those folks that join our organization. And again, we're going to continue to build upon what we're doing. We have several frameworks, from carrier selection to fraud to advocacy, government freight. This year is one of our priorities. We're going to take a lot of those frameworks and put those into interactive courses that will be available to members at no additional cost. Just delivering as much educational value as you possibly can.
That's fantastic. I like that because it's a little bit of a spin on, it's not just the same webinar. You're taking a little spin to do something different. I was just telling somebody the other day, I love doing webinars and lunch and learns and those types of things, but I think everybody got a little worn out with that type of thing during the pandemic. So let's put a little spin on it, because people still want the educations, people still want the information. But you got to kind of make it a little bit more exciting sometimes from what, has been in play for the past couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've talked about a lot of different benefits that members have. So tell us a little bit more about the membership. We mentioned the Intermodal faction, but there's some other sort of factions of membership.
There are? Really?
Not necessarily against each other, just,
Okay. Okay. All right.
Tell us about who makes up the membership and who might be an ideal member who is watching or listening right now.
Yeah, anybody obviously in logistics, truck brokerage, intermodal marketing space. Really, we're TIA. We're kind of a big tent. We've got folks that do a variety of different things, from traditional truck brokerage to IMCs to warehousing. You name it within the logistics supply chain. We've got folks that are doing it, customs brokers. So we're a big, like I said, we're a big tent. We like to bring as many folks in as possible. We have several different policy committees that are focused on these different modes of transportation, different segments of the industry that are driving directly what our policy positions are that we're taking to the agencies and to Congress. And we're proud of what we're doing. And, we want to, again, be that voice for the industry where we can.
And where do all these people meet? We're all going to meet in San Antonio here not too long for the big Capital Ideas Conference. So tell us a little bit about that. That's one of my favorites every year.
Yeah, April 9th through 12th in San Antonio, Texas. The beautiful JW Marriott Resort there in the Hill Country. We're excited about it. 1,500 plus folks. Cindy Amos and her team do an amazing job of putting together world-class education. It's amazing the amount of education sessions that these guys put together and pack into this small period of time. Probably one of the best trade shows, the best trade show in my opinion in the industry. Just so much action and energy on the trade show floor. Just a great overall event, and look forward to seeing everybody there.
Absolutely.
So how do people both register for membership and register to attend the conference?
Yeah, everything can be found online on our website, www.tianet.org.
Great. Chris, we really appreciate you taking the time today, and best of luck as you continue going forward in your new role.
Great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and share a few thoughts with you guys. Thank you.
Chris, always good to talk.
Thanks, Shelley.
So yeah, just an obvious tie-in. We had Ann on, and we're talking about her time at TIA before. So let's talk about what TIA is doing right now.
I know it was very good timing. I'm sure you strategically did that. And I thoroughly enjoyed it because we were able to talk about some similar topics, but we were able to touch on some different topics as well that really round out everything that we're dealing with in our industry.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a background with Chris as well, so I mean, must feel good to see somebody who's really been working hard in that arena and with TIA for a while get that next step there.
Super excited, right? Because we've got Ann over at IANA, which I'm on the board there. We got Chris now running the TIA, and I'm still on the Intermodal committee there. That sounds very like me, I. That's terrible pronoun problem. But no, it is very exciting because I have seen these people in the industry, and they are super impactful, amazing. And as I mentioned before, I think the two organizations are good at collaboration, and we can do so much more as we continue forward. And so it is super exciting to see them both in their roles.
Well, we appreciate you seeing both of them in the last couple of episodes, and make sure that you rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts, and drop us a comment if you have any questions or feedback. Also, you can email us at podcast@intechlogistics.com. If you have a more detailed question that you want to take offline, we're happy to answer that as well. And you can find us on our website, www.intechlogistics.com, for more about Intech Logistics. And we'll be back with another episode very soon. For Shelley, I'm Kevin. Thanks for joining us.